Hey Internet, Gordon Young with PCWorld here, and the day is finally here where we can talk about Intel's brand new moonshot of a CPU, the Core Ultra 200S series of CPUs. Yes, I know it's a mouthful, but believe me, I've heard worse recently. It is basically a big change for Intel because for Intel, it is moving away from the long-standing monolithic design that is used in chips forever. So with Arrow Lake, with this brand new Core Ultra 200S series, we are seeing Intel move to a disaggregated design, and you're wondering what that means. First, let me point you, if you want to know more about what's inside of this chip, you can go to PCWorld.com right now, read a couple stories from my coworker, Mark Hockman. He's written some deep dives on what you can expect out of the Core Ultra 200S series of chips. Deep dive on what's happening under that heat spreader, but I'm going to peel back this heat spreader and we are going to take a look at what it looks like. Voila, like magic, we see you have your heat spreader on top that you're familiar with. You have your package on the bottom, but what's between all that? You have our base tile, which is made by Intel, and to that you snap on a compute tile, which has like, you know, your P cores, your E cores, a lot of this goodness. Your filler tile is basically a part of the chip that is, there's nothing occupying it. So it's like going into a restaurant, having a table wobble, and you want to just fold up a piece of cardboard in the menu and jam it on there to keep it from moving around. That's what that filler tile does. The IO tile might have something like, oh, I don't know, SATA, might have Ethernet. It might have sort of that lower end sort of plumbing stuff that you don't really care that much about. The SoC tile basically has one step up from that. You might have your memory controller jammed onto the SoC tile. And of course, your GPU tile, as the name implies, gives you your GPU. So again, these are all Lego snapped onto this base tile, letting Intel move these chips around and build them differently for what it needs to make. And again, you can read more about the deep dive on PCWorld.com as the embargo should have lifted. But let's click over to the only thing you really care about. Unfortunately, that is page 10, and that is the lineup. The Core Ultra 200S series of CPUs. There are 5 chips. There's one Ultra 9 285K, giving you the most cores. By the way, there is no hyperthreading. People have laughed about this. They've made Macaulay faces about this. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's not a bad idea if the choices are made for the right reasons, and it looks like Intel has done those for the right reasons. Okay, let's start at the top. You have the Core Ultra 9 285K, 24 cores, 24 threads. Previously with the P cores, you got hyperthreading with that. You're not getting that this time. Makes it a lot easier. You're also getting your GPU cores in that Ultra 9. You're getting 13 tops in the NPU. You're getting a 5.7 gigahertz max gigahertz clock speed. That's on the top end Ultra 9. From there, we move on to 2 Ultra 7 parts. The Core Ultra 7 265K, dropping you to 20 cores, 20 threads. Actually, very easy to understand. In some ways, it's making it a little easier. 4 GPU cores, 13 tops for the NPU. Drop a little bit of clock speed to 5.5 gigahertz max. And from there, we do the usual thing where Intel's like, you know what? You really don't all need GPU cores. We're going to cut that out of that one. So you lose the GPU cores. You still get the 20 threads, 20 cores of a Core Ultra 7 265K, but the F denotes you're not getting the GPU cores. Of course, clocks on the overall CPU are about the same. The lowest end here is the Core Ultra 5 245K, 1414. Again, see, not so bad. You're getting 4 GPU cores, 14 tops for the NPU, 5.2 gigahertz. And if you take the F part because you don't care about the GPU at all, you don't even need to light the thing up because you're sure that the discrete card is always going to work. You can lose those GPU cores and basically get to 1414, 13 tops, 5.2 gigahertz. Again, fairly easy to understand, but let's kick over to the only other slide you're going to care about, which is the unfortunate state of this world. I'm just going to click over to page 45. We're going to go through there really quick. And yes, that is the previous slide with the actual prices, because you want to know how much you're going to pay for these. It's not a huge cost adder, despite the fact that, as far as I know, I believe these are all made by TSMC as far as the important chips here. Intel is making the base tile. I have not clarified that with Intel, and I don't think they've said yet, but as far as we know, you're not getting it. But $589 for the top end Core Ultra 9 285K. You save quite a bit of money by going to that Ultra 7 part, basically just under $400 versus just under $600. That's a decent savings, and you can shave another $20 to $15 off if you lose that GPU tile. And if you go down to a Core Ultra 5, 1414, 5.2 gigahertz, and keep the GPUs, you drop down, 60, $70. That's not bad at all. And I don't think it's really worth it to go to that Ultra 5 245KF because you are giving up a lot for $15. Why would you want to give up that extra GPU cores? I would probably take that myself, but the sad state of the world is that's the only thing you care about, the specs and the prices, which is too bad because there's a lot of magic to this chip. Again, I would encourage you to go over and read Mark Hochman's story, the deep dive that he's going into on the Arrow Lake parts, but you're going to want to know about the bold claims that Intel is making. Let's click all the way back to the beginning here. And what do we got? Arrow Lake program goals. Basically, they're saying they want to reduce the package power by 40% while delivering you 15% generational multi-threaded performance. What the hell does that mean? They're basically saying you're used to our chips running really hot, generally also pretty fast, but really hot. They consume a lot of power. You get angry about it. You gnash your teeth. With this one, we're going to seriously reduce the power and still give you 15% generational multi-threaded performance. Basically saying we're still going to give you top-end performance while reducing power, which is not a message we've heard from Intel for many, many years now. And also, the last claim you claim that you probably want to care about is they are saying we are going to maintain gaming performance. So again, 40% reduction in power, 15% increase in multi-threaded performance, and maintaining that good gaming performance you sort of expect out of those i9 parts. I know people say, oh, you don't get it. You actually do get a decent amount of performance out of the i9, depending on the game, depending on the title you're playing. But at this point, these are actually not points to hit or to miss, and Arrow Lake apparently does them all. Again, you got to wait for the reviews to come in to see what you think. And for user experience, expand AI acceleration, Intel is saying Arrow Lake, unlike a lot of desktop chips, unlike 13th Gen, unlike Ryzen 9, they didn't really lean to giving you heavy-duty AI performance. We are actually going to give you decent AI performance. Is it going to beat a Lunar Lake? No, probably not. Is it going to beat a Ryzen AI 9 mobile part? No, but at the same time, they are going to at least give you some AI performance, and Intel is saying they think that's a good thing. You're also going to be getting a step up in the integrated graphics with the XC-LPG for the latest media support. Basically, you're getting the latest codecs. Not quite the top end. I don't think you're going to be getting the VP6 support, but you are going to be getting some Sony XAVC codec, 8K and 4K. So that's a nice thing. And also, by the way, you're going to be reducing the package power by 10 degrees while gaming. So, hey, that's nothing to sneeze at because you can actually, if Intel is not fibbing here, you'll be able to get with Arrow Lake a decent reduction in package power while at the same time getting a decent reduction in temperatures. 10 degrees C reduction in package temps, 40% reduction in package power. So again, pretty good showing for Arrow Lake if the claims are right. Let's keep going though, because there's a lot more to talk about. Again, same performance at half the power of Raptor Lake. Skymont is the E-cores that everybody's been raving about in Lunar Lake. Lion Cove is not bad either, because basically you're getting a 9% increase in uplift over the previous P-cores used in the Raptor Cove P-cores. Basically, what we're getting on the previous gen parts. We're going to back up one more slide here. So basically, what Intel is saying is with Arrow Lake, we're going to be hitting a lot of things people have been complaining about. We've heard you. We've heard that you say you want it to run cooler. You want to use less power. We're able to deliver all of that with this chip. And, well, of course, still giving you very good performance. And again, highest multi-thread performance in the industry, up to 24 cores for industry-leading compute throughput on desktop CPUs. And let's look more into these claims that Intel is making. You can see another bold claim right here. Arrow Lake halves productivity power consumption. Productivity power consumption. What does that basically mean? That essentially means lightly threaded tasks. I know the world thinks you need 24 cores or 32 cores or even more to do everyday tasks. You really don't. And Intel is basically saying, yeah, if you're going to be running Office 365, if you're going to be doing some AI computer vision stuff, as you can see on the slides here, productivity, this is UL Procyon. If you're doing Procyon AI computer vision, lightly threaded task again, Cinebench 2024, single core again, lightly threaded task, and doing a Zoom video call. So basically not doing much at all. That would require a very expensive 14 Gen Core i9. But they're still saying if you pair it up, if you did these tasks with a Core Ultra 9 to 85K, you would save a serious amount of power. In fact, lowering the package power by 58% for the peak package power. And you're seeing it right here. Cutting package power on a Zoom call by 58%. I get it. Why sit here on your computer chomping away at that CPU, eating all kinds of electricity, producing all that kinds of heat? It's kind of nice to have it actually run very efficiently. This actually kind of gives you some tantalizing promises of what we might see in upcoming CPUs that could get even better as we move on. Cinebench again, would you really be doing rendering on a single core? Probably not. But if you did, you can see that you would be saving a serious change in power and efficiency here by dropping it by 42% for the package power. Again, Procyon AI computer vision, 42% and 44% for Office. Again, these are fairly bold claims because you will be able to save a lot of power doing the stuff that occupies most of the things we do every day. So those are bold claims. We'll see when we get there. I don't know if we're there yet. And also, by the way, this is targeting, let's read let's read the thing. Comparison of Ultra 200S series processors against our prior generation enthusiast desktop processors targeting 125 watt TDP. So basically higher TDP for that previous chip, and this is lower essentially. All right, so moving on to the next slide, we're looking at leadership core performance Intel's claiming. And what does that mean? It basically means, you know what, we still are going to give you very decent performance over a Core i9 14900K with our blue brand new Ultra 9 285K, which you can see in this blue bar here. And Intel's going to say, you know what, there's some things we don't win at. Geekbench will be slightly faster than us, and in Geekbench single threaded, where they're pushing about maybe 8% more leadership core performance. But we're at 5%, nothing to sneeze at. And by the way, we're still faster than our Core i9 1400K. But however, looking at Spec Rate 2017, very respected chip benchmark, we are outperforming that Ryzen 9 9950 by 6%. We're outperforming it in Cinebench by 8%. We're outperforming it using the 3D Mark CPU profile by 11%. Nothing to sneeze at. Not bad at all, frankly. But it again backs up what Intel is saying. But we're still going to be able to give you leading performance, not in everything, but in plenty of things that matter. And that is, again, a bold claim by Intel. We'll see when we get the parts in our hands. But that basically means this chip is pretty competitive at very low power consumption versus Core i9. And also, by the way, doing really well against Ryzen 9 9950X as well. Let's keep going. And it does also, Intel saying we're actually, when you get to the bar for CPU compute, as we move into multi-core performance, remember we gave up our hyperthreading. AMD still has SMT, which is their version of hyperthreading on their chips, but we are still able to perform quite well, 24 threads versus their 32 threads. Look again, blue bar, longer bars are better. Ultra 9 here is outperforming the Ryzen 9 Series 9000, basically 9950X, by what, 11%? And we're also beating our Core i9 14900K. We're beating the Core i9 14900K pretty much across the board. Geekbench multi-core, Spec Rate, Cinebench all-core, as well as 3D Mark all CPU cores. It is simply outperforming the Core i9-1400K and also outperforming Team Red there across the board as well. Pretty nice. Well, not quite across the board because, again, Geekbench looks like 9950X is doing quite well. So anyway, overall, a good showing for the chip from what we could read of this. But again, you're going to want to see these parts in reviewers' hands as well just to verify this. Let's keep going to see what we got. The chart that everybody loves to look at and very few people understand. It still throws my head for a bit of a loop at times when I look at that. Basically, energy efficiency, leadership from low to high. So what does this mean? So the blue line on top is basically the Ultra 9 285K. You can basically see them saying across wattage of 65 watts, 95 watts. I believe this is package power. 125 watts, 180 watts, 250 watts. They're doing pretty well, outperforming these competing chips. They're really, really well outperforming the Core i9-1400K, which, let's face it, like to consume power when you push it hard. And they're also outperforming Ryzen 9 9950X as well, especially when you're looking at across the power band. And the thing that also really matters that Intel is pointing out, when you look at this right here, Core Ultra 9 285K is outperforming the Core i9 1400K at half the power because this chip is rated at 250 watt TDP. And when you set that Core i9 to 250 watts TDP at 125 watts, which is where the Core Ultra 9 285K is running, they're giving you the same performance at half the power. So Intel is really, really leaning into the fact that we are giving you fantastic power efficiency on this generation of chips. Okay, so this next slide we're looking at is something that will be of interest to gamers. That is one giant leap in gaming performance per watt. And I'll be interested to see what the reaction from gamers is to this because this is comparing the Core Ultra 9 285K against the Core i9 14900K. And in this, you'll see the line for performance is the Core i9 14900K, and the bars are the Core Ultra 9 285K. And you can see where basically there are some games where Intel is saying, you know what, Core Ultra 9 is a pretty powerful CPU. It certainly consumes enough power. It should be powerful. And there's some things it's going to win at. It's going to, for example, win in Far Cry 6 by 13%. It basically outperforms that Core i9 outperforms the Ultra 9 by 13%. It outperforms in Final Fantasy, good Lord, is this a Super Bowl? Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail by 8%. And in F1 2024, the Core i9 will outperform the newer chip by 9%. And then Red Dead Redemption 2, you're looking at Core i9 actually outperforming the new Core Ultra 9 285K by about 4%. And these other ones where they basically are saying par, that's basically saying on parity. So no big change here. It's probably within the margin of error. And essentially you're getting very similar performance for the vast majority of these games when you're comparing the Core i9 versus the Core Ultra 9. However, when you're looking at the power savings, it's pretty significant because Intel is saying, you know what, even though these pretty much are giving you similar performance, Total War Pharaoh, you are saving 58 watts of total power for the Ultra 9 versus the Core i9. So you will be saving power there. And when you're looking at Black Myth Wukong, you're looking at saving 34 watts for total system power for Core i9 versus Ultra 9. And as you move on to some of these other games, Warhammer Space Marines 2, you're looking at a whopping 165 watts for total system power and 136 watts for Age of Mythology Retold, while also slightly outperforming it in frame rates. And for Civ Civilization 6, Gathering Storm, decent 11% improvement for Core Ultra 9, and for F1 2023, 15%. So again, some gamers may look at this and go like, gosh, I expected more. I understand. But I really think a lot of this messaging here will be around the power, and I get it. But remember, this is also running this at 1080p high, which are you really building a box to run at 1080p? And by the way, the GPU used for all of these, I looked, were GeForce 4090s. So again, these are very, very high-end systems running at 1080p resolution with a 4090. So for these scenarios, they're basically picking game setups that are not GPU limited at all. They're made to be specifically CPU limited, and we can see, again, you're getting decent game performance savings per watt with Core Ultra 9 versus Core i9. But of course, I know you want to see how it does against Team Red. Let's find that here. We'll skip that. Basically, again, you're seeing that you're seeing serious power reductions going to Ultra 9 from Core i9. You want to see Slash's gaming power. We got it. This chip is really, really power efficient Intel. We understand. Love it. I personally like it. I like it. At the same time, I also understand the GPU is eating all the power, so maybe we should be talking to NVIDIA now. But let's keep going. Cooler and quieter gaming with Arrow Lake. Again, pretty decent. You're seeing all these measurements. Average package temp drops across the board. You're basically just getting all kinds of power efficiency when you go to Ultra 9 instead of Core i9. Intel does understand, however, that gamers want to see the decision tree between Ryzen 9 and Ultra 9. So they did throw us a bone here. We are seeing Battle of the Titans. Gamers win when competition is fierce. And the blue bars, basically, taller bars are better. We're not actually getting raw frame rates here, but we can see 1080p. High image quality selected at 1080p. But we can basically see the setting is 1080p, high image quality, and relative performance. The blue bar, longer is better for your team. Blue bar doing fairly well, but let's start from the left-hand side where AMD is actually winning. Again, this is Intel showing that in Cyberpunk 2077, the 9950X is outperforming the Ultra 9. Looks like to the tune of around 13%. Not exactly sure how they computed this, but around 13%. Red Dead Redemption, about 11% for Ryzen 9 over Ultra 9, about 10% for Final Fantasy XIV, and F1 2024. Again, not a great showing for Ultra 9 against Ryzen 9. Again, Ryzen 9 is not a bad chip despite all the unkind words that have been said about the 9000 launch. It's not a bad chip, but look, 7% for 9950X over the Core Ultra 285K, 4% for Core Ultra 9, 4% for 9950X over the Core Ultra 9 285K. So you know there's got to be a lot of fist pumping in the air at AMD right now. And as we move into these, again, parity, basically margin of error, nobody really cares. Total War Pharaoh, Black Myth Wukong, parity. Far Cry 6, parity. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, parity. Star Wars Outlaws, parity. Metro Exodus, parity. And they're marking this off as parity. I'm not sure why. This probably should have gotten a 4%. Tom Clancy, Rainbow Six Siege, 4% lead for Intel. 6% for Age of Mythology Retold, lead for Intel. Sid Meier's Civ 6 Gathering Storm, 11% leading for Intel. And Total War Hammer 3 Mirrors of Madness, 28% lead for Intel here. So those are nice, decent wins for Ultra 9. But there's plenty of things where they're tied because, again, these are powerful CPUs. And running with a 4090 and 1080p, is anybody really surprised by these results? I'm not so sure we should be. But on the left-hand side, we do see that AMD clocks in some decent wins against the brand new Ultra 9. So when we look at these stacked up, looking at gaming and content creation, you can see that overall, they both do fairly well depending on what you're going to pick. Cyberpunk 2077, Far Cry 6, again, the wins are for AMD. Pretty much parity for Assassin's Creed, Tom Clancy. Parity, again, I would think you'd probably put that Tom Clancy in a win for Intel maybe. And Civ 6 Gathering Storm, a big win for Intel there. And for content creation, though, these are nice wins for Intel. Intel's been working really closely with AMD with Adobe for a long time. They are parity with After Effects multi-core performance for Puget systems in Puget Bench. They are a lead for Intel against 7950X in Blender GPU GeoMean, CPU benchmarks, not GPU. So they have a decent lead there in Blender benchmarks. For Geekbench, they're giving the Ultra 9 an 18% win, a 21% win in Cinebench and all-core. So again, very, very good showing. And Pavre, a 30% improvement in multi-core for Pavre for content creation for the Intel part. So pretty decent there, depending on what poison you're going to pick. So the next slide is titled Arrow Lake Performance per Watt delivers awesome scaling for efficient gaming. And that's basically saying, like, look, we're giving you the same game performance. I know that's actually going to probably chap a lot of gamers' hides, but they're saying we're giving you basically the same performance at half the wattage. And we're seeing that right here where 125 watt PL1, 175 watt PL1, 250 watt PL1 is the default for 285 versus a Core i9 chip, right? So pretty decent. And there are some things that need to be pointed out. Intel does say APO is enabled for all the testing that it's shown off. And if you don't know, APO is basically a long story, but basically a way to get more performance out of Intel CPUs, provided you install the free app utility that's available in the Windows Store. Let's keep rolling, though, because there's just a few more slides to get through. Almost to the end. A cooler and quieter flagship experience. Yes, we understand. And actually, this is actually a pretty interesting one here where they're saying Intel Core Ultra 7 65K. Remember, that's not like that cheaper, you lose four cores, 4 threads, but you also save quite a bit of money going to that Ultra 7 versus the Core Ultra i9 14900K. And this is the very interesting thing. Again, they're upfront about it. They're not trying to hide it. They're saying GeoMean gaming performance on Core Ultra is lower than the Core i9 14900K. I suppose that's not bad because the 14909K does cost more, but it is always hard to come out and say that you're actually running a little slower. At the same time, they are doing it at a lower temperature and up to 188 watts lower system power than the previous generation part. So that is a Core Ultra 7, basically giving up about 5% of performance versus that Core i9, yet still actually saving you a buttload of power. So this is probably something they think gamers and a lot of people will forgive, because it is something people have been asking from Intel for a long time, which is we want better power efficiency. Sure, it's always nice to have better gaming performance, but the power efficiency has gotten a little crazy with Core i9s through 13th gen, 14th gen, and even 12th gen wasn't exactly a great savings of power there. So they're basically saying, yeah, we hear you, and we're giving you, decent amount of gaming performance and overall performance, but also saving you a lot of power. But wait, there's more, because not only do people use their PCs to play games, they use them to create things, and things that matter like codecs, rendering things out, After Effects, Lightroom. Those things matter too. So how does it stack up? Well, let's look. This is a Core Ultra 9 285K versus a Ryzen 9 9950X. So the red line across here is a 9950X. And we have, of course, all of the blue bars representing that Ultra 9 285K. Let's see if there's anything here in the details that we need. No. And let's read across the bottom. 8K HEVC to HEVC UHD. A lot of that magic comes from the QuickSync performance we've gotten out of Intel chips. It's been worth it for a lot of people for content creation. It's really proven to be worth it. It doesn't change much here. But they've also added these new things like 8K XAV HCH codec. So I believe that's a new Sony codec, 8K HEVC codec. You're getting 7.3x increase in playback over a Ryzen 9. You're getting 2.8x in playback over a Ryzen 9. And you're getting a 70% increase and 5.7 DNxHR. Those are all sort of like nerdy video stuff that I don't understand, but video people can understand. But let's keep going because there are other things that people do, like rendering 3D models. That does actually, people do that for a living. They actually don't do that just for fun on the internet. And you're looking at about a 10% increase over that. Interesting. It doesn't seem to match previously what they were saying, but this is all core. So all core, they're saying 10% increase over 9950. Ray, of course, they were pushing that hard earlier. Nice increase. UL Procyon, I don't really use UL's Procyon too much, but it is, they offer one for video editing using Premiere, and they also offer one using Photoshop and Lightroom. Most of the stuff I use is Geekbench and Premiere Pro. You're looking at about a 6% increase for the Core Ultra 9 285K over the Ryzen 9 95X. Not bad, not bad. 9950X did do pretty well though. And when you're looking at After Effects, again, not a bad showing for AMD, but still 4% better performance out of that Series 200, that Ultra 9 Series 200 chip. Where they do lose some ground is in Adobe Lightroom Classic, where they're still fairly close, but that Ryzen 9 9950X does push that Ultra 9 285K out of the way, and it also does that in Photoshop, where AMD has actually had some really good showings on mobile and on desktop in Photoshop, and we're seeing that show up here. Finally, this is workflow. I don't know what this is. I'll have to ask them what this is, but it's playing 8K XAVC while doing a Blender render. And they're saying with that workflow, which I'm going to assume is real, gives you an 86% improvement in performance for the Core Ultra 9 285K over a Ryzen 9 9950X. So that's a big win for Intel there. And of course, we can't forget about AI, because AI is not going away, folks. There's actually some really cool things they're doing in AI here. I'm not going to get into this demo too much because there's a lot to get into, and we're running out of time. But this really does talk about where developers are going, because on the PC, you have different ways you can slot your AI performance. Do you want to run on your GPU, your integrated GPU, your CPU, your NPU? I don't know, but Intel surveyed developers, and they said, like, you know what? We can see over 2024, 2025, we'll be pushing, we'll be actually leaving the CPU slightly, and looks like pushing on to the NPU. Doesn't look like they'll be moving on to the GPU too much, but the NPU is probably where the action is, because you'll be saving a lot of power. And I guess developers are hearing from people where they say they want to move on to the NPU usage for AI, and that's probably where they're going to be headed in the future. All right, this is the performance in the brand new Geekbench AI performance. This will be easy to run. Anybody can buy it for $100, but it's up to 2x the performance of Raptor Lake refresh, plus NPU 3 for new performance with opportunities. So essentially, they're saying that Intel is basically saying, we'll give you good performance across the many engines that Geekbench AI tests, which is whether NPU, iGPU, or CPU. And this is against a Core i9 1400K, where the Core Ultra 9 285K actually does fairly well. And also it runs on all of these different engines that Geekbench AI performance will be pushing. The next one is UL Procyon. Again, this is computer vision. CPU can be run on CPU, iGPU, NPU, and those blue bars are the Core Ultra 9 285K. Definitely look like a lot of big wins there on iGPU and NPU. Of course, we know it was terrible on the Core i9 1400K, but also iGPU, the Core i9 didn't exactly push the GPU too hard, but we're getting a bigger, fatter, just integrated GPU in the new Ultra 9 285K, and that's going to pay off dividends. But in CPU, nothing to write home about, except for floating point 16 performance, where it's fairly decent, it looks like. Next up is AI performance running across various different applications, very popular. Audacity, this is dynamic noise suppression. They've showed off this demo before. Adobe Lightroom Classic, look, 15% win against the 9950X, 16% win against that 9950X, 17% in Topaz Video AI against that 9950X, and Premiere Pro, 18%. Adobe Premiere Pro, that's auto reframe, where Intel, their close developer relations are paying off dividends here. And again, the Adobe Premiere Pro audio auto tag, 34% improvement in performance over that Ryzen 9 9950X. So again, those close relationships are paying off. It pays off for NVIDIA. It pays off for Apple big times. And it looks like it's paying off decently here for Intel. And Adobe After Effects scene edit detection using AI, 50% improvement over a Ryzen 9 9950X if you're using whatever routine that they're using, shown off by Intel here. But again, developer relations matter. That's why consoles do so well in gaming. And that's why it's actually paying off dividends for Intel here in these very popular, I wouldn't call them just benchmarks because they're actually what people do. These are the applications that people use every day. And if you're interested in AI, and that's something you want to lean to, especially with content creation and Adobe products, Lightroom, Classic, Topaz, Audacity, then you're probably going to take a good, hard, long look at the Ultra 9 285K against that Ryzen 9 9950X. Okay, I know we're almost at the end because we're talking about chipsets, and chipsets are something that always gets short shrift, unfortunately. It's something that I think is important, though, but there will be one new socket for the brand new Ultra 2 series, 200S series, and that is going to be LGA 1851. Currently we're on LGA 1700. That is end of life at this point. It's going away. I would encourage you, if you're looking towards the future, if you were looking at Series 2, you're going to want a motherboard that uses LGA 1851. And the big differences are more PCIe lanes, because you got 16 lanes on previous LGA 1700 boards. And that didn't really help because we got to the age where we were probably going to get LGA. We're probably going to get GPUs that use PCIe. But if we use the PCIe 5 GPU, then we would have nowhere to put our PCIe 5 SSD. And PCIe SSDs are here. It would be nice to use Gen 5 PCIe GPUs alongside our Gen 5 PCIe SSDs. You can't do that in 1700. Obviously, there's not enough Gen 5 lanes on there, and it's just something that, of course, isn't realistic because we haven't seen Gen 5 discrete GPUs yet, but you're going to be getting 20 lanes of PCIe 5, which I believe brings into parity with AMD, because AMD has long given you 20 lanes of PCIe 5. They've kind of laughed at Intel about not doing that, and we are getting 48 total lanes of PCIe. You're also getting a look at what else we're getting on the board itself, and you're getting 10 USB 3.2s, you're getting 14 USB 2s, 8 SATA ports, and of course, this is the chip itself. Those SATA ports, I'm guessing, are off of the I/O die. I don't have how it's spelled out in front of me, but again, I/O die is probably PCIe, and that PCH is that SATA. All that sort of like low-key plumbing stuff that nobody really cares about too much. And ESPI is basically, I believe that's a replacement for low pin count portions of the chips that we used before. Okay, up next in the platform chipset motherboard side, we have our integrated stuff. So the Thunderbolt 4 is integrated into Arrow Lake. You get 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports. You also get Thunderbolt Share. Apparently, that will carry the Share logo. Cool stuff. We have a video on that. You can actually share at really, really fast Thunderbolt speeds. You're also getting Wi-Fi 6E. You're getting Bluetooth 5.3 and 1 gig Ethernet integrated into the actual Arrow Lake chips themselves. But if you will go like, well, I want Thunderbolt 5 Intel, where's my Thunderbolt 5? Well, you can get that, but that will be up to the motherboard vendor to integrate that using discrete. So basically, if they do a discrete chip for Wi-Fi 7, Thunderbolt 5, Bluetooth 5.4, or 2.5 gig and up, you'll have to have the motherboard. You have to look for a motherboard that has that kind of goodness that you want. And for this slide, actually kind of important, although I don't see it really changing too much as far as the max that you can room the max out memory with, because as I understand it, you could get plenty of RAM on LGA 17 with 14 gen. You can get 192 gigs of RAM, up to 48 gigs with those kind of interesting high capacity, weird half DIMMs. You kind of got ECC support, and you got dual channel support. So I didn't quite understand why Intel even bothered to point this out, except on LGA 1851 as well as Arrow Lake, you will be getting support for CU DIMM and CSO DIMM. And those are basically, you heard about this at CES a year ago, where essentially they integrated a clock driver into the UDIMM. So basically, it's integrated into the DIMMs that we got. There's a redriver chip that lets the CPU redrive higher memory at higher clocks, well meeting JEDEC specs. That's called CU-DIMM. And when you see that integrated into SO-DIMM, small outline DIMM, like you might see in an all-in-one, that's called the C-SO-DIMM. So basically, you will be able to get JEDEC approved clock speeds and timings out of your Arrow Lake parts if you are going to be using a CU-DIMM or a C-SO-DIMM. You cannot necessarily do that with Core i9 on 14 Gen or Ryzen 9, as I believe it, although they should work and it should simply bypass it. I have a call with a couple memory manufacturers to figure it out, but I don't think you'll be able to necessarily take advantage of the goodness of the clock redriver that we've heard talked about for about a year. We also talked about it at Computex too. All right, I'm just going to stop here for a while. This is basically a lot of the detailed information that Intel's given up on these chips. You can just stop here, press the pause button, go grab a cup of water, sit here and linger, get out your notebook, take some notes on what you're going to be seeing out of the Ultra 9, the Ultra 7s, and the 2 Ultra 5s. What do they give you? What do they bring you? A lot of this is already condensed into the other chips, so you really don't have to sit here too long. But if you do want to look at it, I will let you stop and linger for a little bit. Okay, actually, there is one more slide that I know a lot of people care about, and I didn't go over, and that is the sales and pre-orders start on October 24th. So when you can see this video, it'll basically be October 10th. We're shifting to the future. And on October 24th, you will be able to start buying systems, I believe, as well as ordering the chips online. So if you want your Series 2 Intel Core Ultra chip, you'll be able to start ordering those on the 24th. I don't know exactly when the reviews will be coming out, but I can imagine if Intel's sticking to the schedule we've seen before, it'll be similar to what we got. So probably by the October 24th, you'll have a good idea whether this is what you want, or do you want to do a Ryzen 9 9000, or we want to do an even older Ryzen 9 7000 if we're looking at the top end parts, or maybe you get a killer deal on a Core i9 14900K from your buddy. Maybe that's the way to go, but you'll be able to start ordering them October 24th. And again, what do I think? Again, it's too hard to say. I will want to see our own results. I want to see numbers from third parties, other reviewers. I want to hear from vendors to see what they think as well, the OEMs that are selling these things to customers. And I do think basically the Core Ultra 200S does bring a lot of good things to the table. A lot of things that people have been demanding. Frankly, I'm not totally down with it. Maybe it's just me because of my views on power consumption and efficiency. I have never cared about it too much on desktops, but people have ragged on me for a long time about that. So maybe it does matter more to people. So if that's what matters to you, then it is really going to be worth seeing. Like maybe this thing will be the best, the top efficiency CPU you can buy for gaming, for content creation, at the same time giving you the best performance per watt over AMD as well as over older Intel chips. We'll have to wait and see. But I am jazzed because, again, competition does mean good things. We could see really, really good stuff out of this chip. And frankly, we could also see people disappointed because it's hard to predict where the internet's going to go. I sometimes think it's going to zag when sometimes it wants to zig. So the fact that you're getting really good power consumption, you're getting generally really good content creation performance because, again, it's worked very closely with a lot of app developers over the years. And you're also not giving a lot up in gaming. It looks like in gaming, it could get better, but maybe there's an overclocking message that Intel's mentioned a little bit here, but they're not going to get into. Maybe the overclocking messages, we can really overclock this sucker. And that's where you're going to be able to get the magic, but we don't want to talk about that now. For the moment, though, I would say hold tight, wait for reviews, wait for our review, see what we say, and then you can sort of figure out where you're going to go. But it's going to be great days because you get to pick between the best AMD has to offer, the best Intel has to offer, as well as their older offerings, which will be also offering really good pricing. So don't be so negative. Maybe this is actually all going to be really good news. In the meantime, though, come back to PC World's channel for more great content covering the PC, as well as going to PCWorld.com, where we have all kinds of stories and deep dives into what is going on with the Ultra 200S series, as well as AMD's Ryzen 9 chips. So keep on coming back and keep reading, because the PC needs your help.